So this is quite a story. They went from having to lean on their faith amid infertility to getting more fertile than they ever imagined, and then starting life with multiples and an extended stay in the NICU. I mean, it has been a crazy ride for Erin and Jared Brents. Erin is my guest today. This is Hope, Faith, and Infertility, a podcast from Southeastern Fertility in Knoxville, Tennessee. And you can find out more about us by going to southeasternfertility.org. Again, that's southeasternfertility.org. And Erin, I just don't know where to start with your story because there is so much to it. I can't imagine, first of all, having triplets. I can't imagine that. And then I can't imagine them being in the hospital for a month and a half. So we're going to get to that part of the story. But I mean, I think first we probably should talk about you and Jared and your initial struggles with infertility. Did you know going into your marriage that this was going to be an issue for you?
Absolutely not. I don't think there's many people out there that do think, man, we might have some struggles here, but I can't quote the statistics off the top of my head, but I know it's pretty alarmingly how many fertility issues could be, whether it's endometriosis or PCOS, which both of those I had, or male factor infertility. I mean, there's so many different things that could happen. So we never entered our marriage thinking that, by no means, but it led us to this journey, and it was a complex one, just I think as any patient's journey is potentially complex, but Southeastern Fertility walked us through every step, and I'm just so thankful that for their guidance and their support. The support was huge, and so I mean, eternally grateful for the blessings that they've helped us achieve in our four children. So
how did it hit you guys at first? I want to camp out on that for just a second, because as you mentioned, this is a common thing, and it feels to a young couple out there like it's not, because it's something that people don't talk about a whole lot. But you mentioned it. It's one in either 7 or 8 couples of childbearing age that do wrestle with this trial of infertility. And I know you guys are both believers. I mean, what were the thoughts that first went through your mind, and how did you navigate it and reconcile it with your faith? Because that's just a trial nobody wants to go through, and nobody expects when you're a young, healthy person like you both were.
Absolutely. Well, I may have perhaps a bit of a unique perspective from a patient's perspective, because what I do for a living is women's health. I work for a surgical company, Cooper Surgical, and from office settings into surgery, which is what I do. But we also are experts in fertility. That's not my side of the business, but I knew, being in the surgical field for 6 years at the time, I was aware of reproductive issues such as endometriosis and PCOS. And when my husband and I started down the trying to conceive journey, I was hyper aware of like what should happen and the cycles and everything. And I was tracking everything from my perspective, and everything was right on track as it should be. So I'll be honest, in my mind, I kind of thought, well, maybe there's something going on his side. But we gave it a couple more months, and right at a year is when I knew, I was like, hey, something should have happened by now. So let's go ahead and get some, consulting through a physician. And I knew, living here in Knoxville, we have 3 or 4 options, but Dr. Keenan was first at top of my list. I had done my research, and I had seen him in the OR a couple of times. So had my initial visit with him, and the first sit down appointment was very straightforward. They kind of walked me through everything and what would happen and testing and so on. And I really thought in my mind there was no way that I would have PCOS or endometriosis or anything else, really. I was like, well, my cycle is normal. I'm getting positive ovulations. Like, it's not me. But was I wrong? Because that's what makes it so complicated is, I really didn't have a lot of symptoms. that indicates some of those things. But upon further testing with some blood testing and ultrasound, I was diagnosed pretty much instantaneously with PCOS and the endo. The endo took a little bit longer to diagnose because there's not really a point of care test that indicates that. So after a couple of months of trying with some fertility assistance and monitoring, nothing was happening still. So that's when we did a diagnostic laparoscopy. So yeah, my husband checked out just fine, but that was really the initial start of our journey. And so I had to adjust my mindset of like, well, this can't be me. It's no way it's my fault, you know? But it was a quick reality check of, hey, it could be me. And it's not my fault. It's just things that are going on internally with my reproductive system. And thankfully, we have testing, and the reproductive endocrinology space that Dr. Keenan and Dr. Gordon are in, they're experts in this, and they're able to adjust medications and regulate things. So I was very positive and optimistic to actually get the diagnosis, because it was almost like there was a reason behind the fact that we hadn't conceived yet. And so once you have that reason, you're able to make a plan to go forward. So I actually was very relieved to get the diagnosis and to begin the treatments for it, for sure.
And okay, so not too far down the road, Logan Results. You're first. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I guess our overall journey from when we first started trying to conceive, seeking some help from Dr. Keenan, because Dr. Gordon actually wasn't there at the time. Right. He joined right after we had our first Logan.
Because Logan's almost 3, right?
Yeah, she'll be 3 in March, and the triplets will be 1 in March. So we've got a big week coming up. But yeah, so I actually got surgery, my diagnostic laparoscopy done in Chattanooga. There's a surgeon there that I worked with for years. He actually specializes in endometriosis. So he did my surgery, and then after a month of recovery, I went right back to Dr. Keenan, and we kind of reassessed, and sure enough, I got pregnant that first month out of recovery. So endometriosis was really what seems to be my underlying cause of the infertility. I had it completely resected out, and I had an appendectomy as a part of that too. I had some endo on my appendix. So Logan was a result of that. I think the total time of trying to conceive was around 20 months. So, not quite 2 years, but we were so excited to finally have a positive pregnancy test. But I also knew in my heart that by no means was the end of the journey, that there could be some other risk involved, miscarriage and things like that. So we tried to remain calm and pray. We you asked me about our faith earlier. I mean, our faith was rooted in this entire journey from the beginning. Even way before we even started to even try to have children, we wanted to make sure that we were grounded in our faith, and that we were mentally ready, and that God was at the center of our marriage, which, it's still a constant, not necessarily struggle, but it's a constant reminder, like, you've got to put that first. And we can always do better at that, no doubt. So yeah, I mean, Logan was blessed with, we had a extremely uneventful pregnancy, thank goodness, with both pregnancies actually. And blessed with Logan. She was a full-term baby, and 9 pounds, 6 ounces, almost 3 years ago. She is such a hoot, such a great personality, and the best big sister ever. So blessed to have that. I mean, we loved it. We loved being parents so much that we quickly wanted to see if we could have another one. And, we didn't get 1, we got 3.
So how did this happen? I mean, if I'm right, you guys did not do IVF through us, right? It was an IUI procedure.
That's right. Uh-huh.
And you got 3? I mean, how does that happen?
Well, that's kind of the irony in our story, Mark. So when I first met Dr. Keenan, he may or may not remember this, but I remember sitting in my room, and I said, Dr. Keenan, I want to be a parent so badly. it's my dream. And I said, I pray constantly for one healthy child, one, like I had a deep rooted almost fear of having multiples. And he told me, he said, look, I get it. We will do everything we can to control that. But unfortunately, with some of the medications that we do, there's always a risk. There's always a risk. Even without the medications, there is a risk of having multiples.
It's always higher with assisted reproduction, and that's just how it is. And everybody who's thinking about it should know that.
Correct. Agreed. And he did an excellent job of, educating me on that. And I fully understood. I said, look, I get it. But Dr. Keenan, I really don't want multiples. Like, I'm terrified. And I even told him, this is no joke. I actually have it documented. Jared and I had first gotten married, and I had two different dreams at months apart. But the first dream I had, it was one of those quick dreams, but I remembered it when I woke up. I was lying in a hospital bed, and I looked down, and I had three babies in my arms. And I woke up and I was like, oh my goodness, like, did I just have triplets? That's crazy. And so that was one dream. The second dream was a couple months later, and I was doing kind of the same thing, except I was pushing them in a stroller. So I had two dreams before we even started trying to have children. This was early on in our marriage. And I self-proclaimed them as a nightmare. I said, oh my gosh, let me tell you about my nightmares that I had. Like, I had triplets. And I felt like it was almost God's way of kind of forewarning me, like, hey, when you're ready to have children, just be ready, because this is happening. And so when we had to go down the journey of seeking fertility assistance, that was always in the back of my mind going, triplets, no. So I told that story to Dr. Keenan, and he thought that was funny. And of course, flash forward, a year and a half later, when we actually did 3 different rounds of IUIs to get the triplets. And on my 4th round, if that round didn't work, we were going to move forward with IVF. And sure enough, the 4th round, and I did all the precautions. I probably asked for, I know I did. I didn't probably. I kind of said, hey, I want to do follicular tracking, which is, a transvaginal ultrasound at the time of ovulation. And I just wanted to see that. I wanted to see how many follicles I had. I needed that kind of affirmation, like, you have 1 or 2. But in my case of getting positives, I actually had 4. And I remember I was like, 4 is a lot, guys. Like, should we keep going? And they said, look, it's up to you. You can keep going. Or you can pull, you don't have to do this cycle, your choice. And we looked back, and actually when I did get pregnant with Logan, I also had 4 and only got 1 positive pregnancy. So I decided to take that chance. And, we got 3 out of the 4 completely fertilized and implanted. Now I'll tell a quick story too. My first ultrasound with the triplets, Dr. Keenan did it, and we were so excited to go in and see, at the 6, I think it was 6.5 weeks is when we went in. And I could tell, I was looking at the screen, and I saw 2 big black circles, and I was like, oh dear, there's 2. And Dr. Keenan said, yes, there's 2. And my husband was so excited because he's a twin, and he thought it would be awesome. And I immediately was just like, oh my gosh, twins, panic mode. But then he saw a 3rd gestational sac that was half of the size. There was no fetal pole or heartbeat. It was just like a small, tiny sac. And he said there was actually 3, but we, based on this age and gestation, and there's no heartbeat, that sac will probably absorb, and it'll be a vanishing twin in kind of slang terms. And I was like, okay, wow, there was going to be 3, but now there's 2. And my husband asked the question. He said, are you telling me that's like medically impossible for anything to happen to that 3rd, like as far as development? And Dr. Keenan said, well, we can't tell you it's medically impossible, but it's highly unlikely that it will develop at this point. And so we took that, and we were like, okay, we're having twins. And I honestly had to get my mind right for twins. I had to okay, it's happening. My best friend had just given birth to twins like that week. So I felt a sense of comfort knowing that I was going to have some resources to lean on. And, my husband's a twin, like I can do this. And then we go back 2 weeks later, and I'm really excited this time. I had adjusted, I had felt calm about it. And Dr. Gordon did my ultrasound, and he said, well, I said, is there still two? And he said, well, there's two, but there's actually three. And my husband and I both were just looked at each other. We were like, oh my gosh, like, what do you mean? It wasn't medically impossible, but it was highly unlikely something was going to happen. So, that's our side story, but, that was baby C was the one that was kind of behind, and baby C is our little girl, Bobby. And it totally fits her personality that she's just the queen bee in charge. And, I look back now and there was a lot of fear, so much fear and worry, about, can I carry them as long as I needed to? There was fear for their health, number one, my health, number two, and financial fears, all these things keep creeping in. And I just had there was one Sunday morning, we were actually listening to church online, and it just kind of, this ease of peace came over me with one of the songs that they played. And from that moment, there was no more fear. I was like, you know what? God has chosen us to be their parents, and there's a reason that we have three. So I need to look at this from a different perspective. I need to be grateful instead of fearful. And that's exactly what I've done all the way to when we had them. And I obviously don't know what I would do without them now. I mean, they're just a part of our family, and I'm so glad there's three of them. I think it's special and unique and fun. It's challenging, no doubt, but we've had a lot of support along the way. So it's been fun.
And so you had Bobby, and then you had two boys, right? Austin and Cannon, if I'm right about that.
Correct.
So man, how far did you make it with them?
So we delivered at 31 weeks and 2 days.
And was that what you were shooting for?
So Dr. Keenan first told me when we knew it was triplets, he said, the good news is you'll definitely have a shorter pregnancy. How short, we don't know. He said that the average triplet pregnancy delivers at 32 weeks. So that was our first goal, was to make it to the 32 week. Actually, our first goal was 28 weeks because that's a huge point in viability. And man, I mean, I had a really not easy pregnancy, obviously, but I mean, I had some sickness that I didn't experience with my first, but other than that, I mean, every checkup, because I was transferred to high risk group here in Knoxville, I mean, it was just like smooth sailing. And I was getting nervous at that. I was like, at what point is this going to really be switched to high risk? Like, you're seeing the physician instead of the nurse practitioner. And I saw one physician in my entire prenatal visits, and they kept assuring me, they said, look, that's a good thing. That means everything is smooth sailing. My blood work came back great every time. I didn't have gestational diabetes, which was fantastic. So everything was lining up, but I was a little disappointed in how far I made it, because I knew one other girl that had carried triplets to 35 weeks, which is fantastic. And I thought, oh my gosh, well, if she was able to do that, and I'm 6'1", so I'm a big girl. And I thought, well, I'm going to have more room for them to kind of, spread out a little. I should definitely be able to make it. It's like 34, 35 weeks. And everything was just so too smooth. And then all of a sudden, that day that they were born, I mean, my body just went into natural labor. And thankfully, we rushed over to UT, and they triaged us very quickly and got me into the C-section. So, but it was fine. The delivery went as well as it could have. And we had a great team at UT. Like, I think there was roughly 21 people in the room. Every baby had their own team of, respiratory and all that good stuff. So it went well.
Okay. So, and I mentioned that they were in the hospital. I mean, and this is normal for triplets to some degree. Multiples are always going to be in the NICU, at least for some time, usually, not always, but usually. And I mentioned they were in there for about a month and a half. in
Mhm.
your case. What was that like? I know you expected it. You expected a stay. Was it harder than you thought? Was it easier than you thought? What was that like for you and Jared and your family emotionally?
That's a really great question. And yes, I did mentally prepare myself that we would have NICU time, whether we delivered at 31 weeks or 33 or 34, there was going to be some time spent. So I'm glad I mentally prepared myself that, hey, Erin, when you walk out of this hospital, you're not taking your babies with you this first time. So for me, I'm a big expectation person. If I have that in my mind, then I do much better versus a surprise attack. So I didn't really know what else to expect though, other than I'm not walking out of there with my babies, but they stayed at UT. And I will just say the neonatologists and the nursing staff in particular, because that's who I saw all day, every day, right, was the nurses. The neonatologists would do their rounds once or twice a day, early in the morning, then later in the afternoon. Typically I wasn't there then, but they were so thorough and they gave you the high level update. If I had more questions, I would obviously get the more detailed answers, but the nurses were fantastic. I had two main nurses that always were assigned to my two, and they kind of alternated shifts, which was great. Became really good friends with them. We are connected on social media and they see, pictures and updates. They ask how they're doing all the time. Shelby Williford was one of them. And she wrote me yesterday, actually, on Instagram. She said, I can't believe they're about to be one. It's crazy. But they're just exceptional care, and they're special people to go into that line of work as well and take care of premature babies or sick babies. But it wasn't necessarily easy. You would ask that, like, was it easier or harder? I will say the positive news about your children or child spending time in the NICU, it allows you time to recover.
Mm-hmm.
I did have two C-sections. Both of my deliveries were C-sections, and my first C-section with Logan, because I did labor and I did push, it exhausted me. And then I took her home, 2 days later, and I was in full-time mom mode, nursing and taking care. Like, it was rough. It was hard to recover and rest myself, versus with the triplets. I had that time to just rest and heal. I mean, I went to the NICU every day. I didn't skip a day. I couldn't, not see him for one day, but it just allowed me time to rest. And that was the benefit of having them in there. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy. It wasn't hard. Some of the NICU parents lived an hour and a half away. Now that would be difficult. I lived 20 minutes away, so I could get there very quickly if I needed to. UT has a great system. I think it's called Angel Eye, where every baby in the NICU, they have a little camera that's over their isolate. So they give you a passcode and you can log in 24/7 and see your baby. So that's really comforting. In the middle of the night when I just want to make sure they're okay, I can just log into the camera. Pretty cool technology. Yeah.
That is, that's great. And that's really reassuring for folks to know, folks who are going to have multiples here in the Knoxville area.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. You have triplets. Another question that people frequently ask: are there lingering health complications? I don't know if you want to talk about that. I believe your kids, all four of them, appear to be pretty healthy. Was that on your mind? How has that checked out?
It was heavily on my mind, especially when we found out that it was triplets and not twins. Because you think about, okay, I'm going to have a shortened pregnancy, and with premature babies, there's always health concerns or potentials. And there's still potentially things that we don't know about yet, right? Autism, for instance, like, you don't know if your child has that until later developmental milestones. But, when they were born, they were under, kind of strict protocol. I forget what they call it, but it was essentially, they were at risk for a brain bleed. So we couldn't really hold them for the first several days, because we were like, look, we don't want to chance it. Like, let them get outside of that window of that protocol, and we will hold them and love them and, do that. But we just wanted them to sit there and be and not take that risk. But now, the babies are 11 months old and seemingly very healthy. Cannon is, he's a wild man, and he's advanced. Like, his gross motor skills and fine motor skills are excellent. Bobby girl is also, she's going to be my rock star athlete. I'm calling it right now. She's fantastic. Like, I mean, her hand-to-eye coordination is impeccable. She kind of runs the show. And then Austin, he was baby A, and he's my biggest baby from birth until now. I mean, he's huge. But he's fine. We've had a little bit more concerns with him that we've been early intervention. We didn't know if he had a low muscle tone. Went to see the neurologist. Everything is checking out great. But he did develop in the NICU. This is something that's common. Torticollis, which is kind of a neck tightening, and they tend to prefer to look to one side. So Austin did develop that. It's not a big deal.
Not a big deal.
Treat that with PT, which we got him in that, and we saw really great results from PT. And then he also, as a part of torticollis, he always prefers the right. He developed plagiocephaly, which is just basically a little bit of a misshapen head. It can be in the form of a flat spot on the back. His was more frontal, kind of looping forward. So we chose to actually get him a helmet, an orthotic helmet. So he's in that right now. It's the cutest thing ever. I'm sure he's ready to get rid of it. But other than that, I mean, he's doing great as well. So
and I'm glad you mentioned the physical coordination, because for folks who don't know, like a guy like me who's a little squirt. I mean, 5'7", but always loved sports, but wasn't that good at them. Mm-hmm. I'm so jealous of families like yours. I mean, for folks who don't know, you were a college basketball player at UTC. You're a mock. Your husband can drive a golf ball, or at least he could at one point.
Oh, yes.
He still can, right?
Still can, yes.
And your brother-in-law was a Major League Baseball player for the Boston Red Sox.
That's right.
So.
And let's not leave the fathers out. So my dad was a 2-time All-American at Carson Newman basketball and a local boys basketball coach for 40 years. And then my father-in-law played football at Mississippi State. So yes, we have a very athletic family. We love sports. We love what it teaches.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. So, I mean, do you think all 4 of your kids are gonna lean toward that?
That's a great question. I mean, I would be lying if I said we don't hope they do. We would love for them to play sports, but Jared and I have had so many discussions, even before we were parents, like, we're going to encourage them to try anything that they want to, right? That could be athletics, that could be, musical things, arts, whatever they want to pursue. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about living in America is you're free to do that. And we want to support them in anything that they do. Our one and only rule is if you start something, you're going to finish it that season. We won't allow any quitters in our family, but no, we certainly hope that they gravitate towards sports. We've already got some little basketball goals here at the house and little golf clubs. So we'll see, we'll hope. I mean, but if they choose not to play, it's totally fine. We just want them to have fun in life and do what they're passionate about.
I'm just very envious. Your husband is the type of person I would never play golf with. I mean, because I'm going to be holding him. He can drive a golf ball like double what I can. I'm floored by that.
He'd love to play with you. I guarantee. He played yesterday for the first time in a couple months, and like he was so excited to go. And then he came back. He just felt like a new man. He was like, "Hey, I played awful because it's the first time I played in a couple months, but man, it was great."
Oh man, I love it. What else? So let's end it here. You mentioned all their birthdays are coming up here in March, first week or two of March. So I mean, are you having a huge birthday blowout? Are you like combining the third birthday and then the 3 first birthdays? What's this going to look like?
That's exactly what we're going to do because, excuse me. So the babies turn 1 on March 8th. And then Logan turns 3 on the 11th. Yeah. So it's it's the same week. And, we don't actually have a large family, but we don't want to create a standard of having 2 separate birthdays. We're just going to have a big blowout at the house. We just renovated this year to make room for all the babies. So we'll have, our family, a little bit of extended family and a couple of friends over. And yes, we are doing a March Madness themed birthday party.
Love it. Love it. It's great. It's great. So
Yeah.
let's bottom line here. And this has been so much fun talking with you. And you've done a great job. But I think I want you to sort of underscore it here at the end. As you talk to somebody who might have had your fear. I mean, you articulated it. Your fear was that if you did fertility treatment, you may have multiples. You've had the multiples. God has given you the strength to get by. I mean, what would you say to somebody who earnestly has that same qualm? And especially if they're a person of faith.
Right. I would say it's okay to have that underlying fear, but if you are the select few that are chosen to have these multiple precious, children, look at it through that new perspective that finally hit me, early in my first trimester, that just choose to look at it. And then my dad also said this to me. He said, "Sis, I know you're scared." Because I called my parents and I was crying. I was like, "It's not 2, it's 3. I'm panicking, freaking out, all these doubts in my mind." And he said, "Look, I know you're scared, but you'll get through it and it's going to be fun." He said, "How fun is that going to be, like, to watch them all grow up together?" And he said, "And also how rare, like, I never grew up with any triplets at my school."
Nope.
So if you choose to look at it through that different perspective and think about, man, that's really rare and really cool and special, and you're going to be fine. There are so many resources for parents, and this is another tip for those parents that may be looking at multiples, whether it's twins or triplets or quads even. Social media is such a powerful thing. And I immediately started connecting with other triplet moms and toddlers and triplets. They have taught me so much about the simple things that I was scared of. Like, how do you feed triplets? I'm such a schedule oriented person. I was like, Logan was on a very regimented, but I'm like, I can't bottle feed 3 babies at the same time. Yes, you can. And triplet moms taught me that, right? Like, there's ways to do it. And there's resources out there. There's actually a great Knoxville moms group that reached out to me on Facebook, and they've been so sweet and kind. I haven't had a chance to get in with them in person yet, but they do meetings and dinners together. They're so sweet, but there's so many resources and you can do it. I truly don't think God would lay this on someone who wasn't capable. So that's what I would tell them. You can do it.
It's a great note to end on. I mean, and that's the bottom line.
Mm.
It's a stewardship. However many kids he gives you, those children are a stewardship. They are the primary stewardship, along with your spouse, that he has given you in your life, and they're going to be your greatest earthly satisfaction is going to come in loving those kids, no matter, and your spouse, no matter.
It's such a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
It truly is. Like, I remember years and years ago when we were trying to conceive our first, and we were praying for this one child, right? And we got her, but we saw what a blessing that was, and we wanted another one. And wow, to be given 3 at the same time, it's a lot. But I mean, my husband and I look at each other, we wind down work all the time, and we're sitting in the living room and babies are crawling everywhere, and we turn on Encanto and dance to, all that stuff. But like, it's such a blessing. And we're thankful. We're so thankful that we have our children, and we're thankful to Southeastern Fertility and the doctors and the nurses there. They're wonderful. They truly have picked a unique and special career path to choose. They're impacting people's lives, and I know it's a hard one, a hard career, but they've really impacted our lives tremendously, and eternally grateful for them for sure.
And if you want to find out more, you can go to our website. Again, that's southeasternfertility.org, southeasternfertility.org. Erin Brentz has been my guest. Mom of 4, 3 of them triplets, and get ready, the craziness has only begun. Erin, thanks so much again. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. Thank you for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
You bet. I'm Mark Mellinger. This has been Hope, Faith, and Infertility.